We welcome you all. We welcome you all to Let's Talk, the webinar series by Zion Exhibitions. Let's Talk is a series of 6 brainstorming sessions on architecture and habitats represented by some of the best architectural professionals from across India. Our first webisode, Development or Propaganda, is a national debate on major government projects by leading professionals. We are truly grateful to have the support of the fraternity for this initiative by Zion Exhibitions. Our panelists are already on board. We shall begin the panel discussion shortly. Request you to kindly stay logged in. We hope the next hour of debate and networking is productive for you. Thank you for your participation and patience.
A very good evening and a warm welcome to everyone who is attending this webinar today. It makes me really very happy to see the kind of support that we've got for this webinar, and I sincerely thank you all. Thank you so much for being here. A special note of gratitude, which I would like to extend to Dr. Sujit for the time and effort that he has put to build this platform and where we all are here today. Let me tell you a little bit about Zion Exhibitions, the organizer of this webinar. Zion Exhibitions is said to be the nation's premium expo, striving to make a difference while raising a unique benchmark in the exhibition industry. It is a platform for showcasing innovative designs, technologies in the field of construction, infrastructure, architecture, and design. The objective is to promote business, share best practices, and encourage relevant industry-related discussions, in addition to bringing together acclaimed industry experts for dialogues, lectures, debate panels, and case studies, like the one that we are on here today. We shall be keeping you updated on further developments, and your suggestions and ideas are most welcome to help us create an event for the industry by the industry. Thank you all once again. Before we begin the webinar, I would like to mention the visionary behind Zion Exhibitions. He is one who ensures that we leave no stone unturned to be an ace contributor to the Indian exhibition industry and the Indian economy as a whole. Okay. With his experience, he is determined to lead the industry by fulfilling every opportunity to deliver value to his clients. His professionalism and commitment sets him up for absolute success. I would like to invite Mr. Adarsh Singh, the young and dynamic director of Zion Exhibition, to give the inaugural address.
Hello.
Over to Adarsh.
Hello, yes. Okay, just 20 minutes. Okay.
Hi, everyone. I would like to thank you all for being a part of the first initiative, Let's Talk, the webinar series. It gives me a great pleasure to see the support of the industry professionals. Thank you all for joining us today. We are trying to build a one-stop shop of an exhibition in India, wherein it will suffice the purpose of all the architectural fraternity. And we are trying to build up an exhibition that will be coming up in 2022 in Delhi, wherein we would like to showcase all the products and the material suppliers who are manufacturers and related to building material, construction, and design. I would like to thank our brilliant team for putting this initiative in a great manner. And thank you all. Thank you to all the speakers, I would like to say, for accepting our invitation and joining us today for this initiative. Thank you, Zenat, and over to you.
Thank you, Adarsh. Thank you very much. I will call upon Ria to introduce our moderator for us today, and we will get on with the webinar.
So just to introduce all the speakers and then the moderator. Let's follow the protocol, the speakers first.
The speakers first, Sujit? Okay, we'll do the speakers first.
the managing partner of CNT Architects, Bangalore, an academic advisor and guest faculty at several colleges of architecture in India and overseas. He writes lectures and blogs on architecture, urbanism, politics, philosophy, education, environment, art, and cultural studies. A warm welcome to architect Prem Chandavarkar. The principal architect of Iyer and Mahesh Architects, Thiruvananthapuram, one of our country's eminent architects with 44 years of experience in academic and professional architecture. He has contributed immensely in the field of sustainable architecture and has revived the timber construction in a modern concept and designed some of the best resorts and hotels in India and abroad. We welcome architect Mahesh Iyer. The principal architect of SJK Architects, Mumbai, is a woman with a mission, building naturally and lightly, and supporting equality through education and feminism. She has a philosophy of building in harmony with nature using elements, sunlight, wind, natural materials, and cultural contexts. The added responsibilities as an occasional writer, jurist, speaker, and teacher are the outcomes of her overwhelming desire to present, engage, and discuss her passions and concerns of 32 years of practice. A heartfelt welcome to architect Shimul Javeri Kadri. A partner in SD Sharma and Associates, Chandigarh. He has been conferred honorary doctorate by Berkeley University. His architecture is termed as Cubist modernism and is highly influenced by Chandigarh, modern and sustainable architecture, an author, an educationist, a motivational speaker, a singer, and a guitarist. His versatility is noteworthy and is a delight to define him. Glad to have architect Sangeet Sharma with us. An architect, interior designer, valuer, and a chartered engineer. Fellow of Indian Institute of Architects, ex-president of Indian Institute of Interior Designers. He is one of the few designers in the country to have received the American Society of Interior Designers certification. He is also a member of USGBC and IGBC president of Alumni Association of Sir JJ College of Architecture, Mumbai. It gives us immense pleasure to have architect Prem Nath, founder of Prem Nath and Associates, with us.
A warm welcome to all our panelists, and we would now like to introduce our moderator for the day.
I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our esteemed moderator, Dr. Sujit Kumar, an architect with a master's in building science and construction management and a PhD in solar passive architecture and earth coupling for space conditioning from IIT Delhi. He has been in the pursuit of intelligent buildings, green and sustainable building design for about 2 decades, and been a Griha trainer and evaluator, and a member on the core group of National Advisory Committee for Sustainable Cities under the Ministry of Housing, member of 2 working groups, WG6 and 8 of BIS for writing the National Code on Smart Cities. Designing with nature, microclimate, and delivering high quality of buildings within is his forte. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. First, let me apologize for the delay. I think we're still getting the things together here. And since Sangeet is not here, I think we'll just get to the point. You see, I'll begin with a 5-minute talk on what the overall status is, and then I will move on to an opening statement from all the speakers. And then it's open for inter-discussions. And once the discussions go on, you could then make your own conclusions from what we have discussed. And I will ask Zion to do your notings. See, the Maze report, latest one, which has come out for the Q1 of the financial year 21, says there are 1,698 major projects of the government of India. And out of this, it includes 469 mega projects. 414 of them are suffering with about 4.3 lakh crores of deficit in funding, which is like saying 66.71% of cost overrun. So if that is the case, let us look at quickly on the big major projects. The topic here is development of propaganda, and there's a reason why we chose this as a topic. With the best of intentions, the country's leadership has done some fantastic, absolutely fabulous job in reaching out to the last village for toilets, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. And humongous, I don't even know the number. I'm told someone said it's about 30 crore toilets. Somebody said it's 2 crores 30 lakhs. Some weird numbers, but there are lots of toilets built and a huge amount of work has happened. It has changed the hygiene habits in the villages in many places. Tremendous work done. Similarly, the PMAY, the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, we have 1 crore 10 lakh houses already handed over. By 2022, the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister has said housing for all. Every man should have a house. So we're looking at about 1.5 crore houses. Effectively put, this is about 50 crore square meters of housing, or something like 540 crore square foot of housing. Now, how much of architectural work has gone into it? How much of new technology, how much of new materials, excellence in design has gone into building these toilets or these houses? It is just mass building with, I would rather call it crass building across, specifically to meet the functional requirement. The most important form of country's growth is actually in the way we build our national resources, our buildings, our roadways. In the field of infrastructure, metro, airports, we have come a long way. But when it comes to actual buildings, there is a huge gap in the mass building sector. In the specific sectors, if somebody were to talk about the new projects that are coming up, the Delhi-Mumbai Trade Corridor, there are 24 investment centers, 8 industrial cities, and 2 airports. How much of this comes to the architectural realm to be selected? Excellence in architecture. The Gujarat Infrastructure and Finance Tech City, the International Tech Finance City, which is rated as a very large development. GIFT City, the Dholera, your inland waterway project, the Mumbai Trans-Harbour Link, which is one of the major projects. So in the next 5-10 years, we're talking about the Sagarmala, the Bharatmala, the Char Dham highways, the Char Dham railway, a huge amount of development across the country. It is not just the Central Vista or the Pragati Maidan or the riverfront developments or the N-Kochi projects. There is a huge amount of government vision to build large projects and to build immensely huge infrastructure across the country. And what are the methods by which the government today hires architects? One, competitions for sure. And I would put up this way, that in competitions, can it be that a housing board wants to do one 10 crore building office or a small apartment? Can it be a competition? So what is a competition? There are strict norms laid down by the Council of Architecture, by the Indian Institute of Architects, on how these selections must happen. But are the state governments or the union government following that? Today, if you look at it, you have competition based, or there are limited tenders where specific pre-qualified people are called in on a 2-stage bidding where design concepts are discussed, and immediately thereafter there's a QC-BS, or sometimes it is an L1 tender. There is an open tender with EMD to be submitted by architects as vendors to bid for a project and then submit free designs to the agency. And this agency then chooses either the architect or the L1 bidder and does it. There is a new trend by the Andhra Pradesh government in the selection of architects to go for a reverse auctioning method, by which the winning design and the winning price has no say. The losers can get together and they can then bid down the price to some absolutely horrible price. Somebody from Lucknow bid 1 rupee as the price. So you have no control on where this profession is going. Then there is a big departmental change or thinking change from the old architects called the master architects, right from the Corbusier or Frank Lloyd Wright or Frank. There was a time when architect was a friend, a philosopher, and a guide who would come in with an idea and a pencil, and then the whole concept used to develop and building edifices used to come through. But today, the larger projects don't work on that one man's idea concept anymore. It is multidisciplinary. There's a huge amount of inputs from engineering aspects. There's sometimes an architect is only doing a concept and somebody else is doing the engineering. Sometimes an architect is doing the concept and the engineering. Sometimes he's also doing the PMC on the site. In most cases now, there's a PMC already appointed on the site who then appoints the architect. So architect just becomes one more vendor. There are also cases, and this is very important. Then you can mute your mic, please. So there are also architects now which come up with I lost my trend. Yeah, so there are now new government projects which are called EPC projects, wherein the agency, whether it is CPWD, whether it is NBCC, NPCC, Engineers India Limited, EPIL, the major central government, WAPCOS, they don't hire now, they do, in new cases they hire EPC, they hire a contractor who would build, and then the contractor will then hire the architect. So imagine the paradigm change. Well, we as architects would be sitting with the client to come up with the idea, gestate the idea into a concept, then get into executing that idea, and then hire a contractor. Here the client sits with the contractor and then decides, the contractor chooses an architect and then executes the project. There are fundamental changes happening in the industry. And these are changes that affect us. I mean, some of us were already reasonably well-to-do, and it doesn't really matter to us because some of us don't do government projects. But most of us who work in the larger format projects with the government find that there is a huge degradation of our position in the ecosystem of design. And in that positioning, we have this question to ask. The Council of Architecture and the IAA, like I used this word, an ivory tower before, they put some rules and quotes and said, this is how the architect should work and this is how he should bid. On the other side, the state government comes up with a law which is entirely opposite to that. You say don't bid below the price. You say price should not be bid. You say price, there should not be an EMD. An architect should not subscribe to a project like that. But look at the execution of those projects by the state or the union or subsidiary, even PSUs for that matter, the Indian Railways, the RITES, the IRCON, the HPCL, the Indian Oil Corporation. They all have their own tendering formats of choosing. So when government projects come up, we have a country of very capable architects with excellent skills. We have a totally confused arena of operation where the contracting procedures are not laid down. Every single entity comes up with its pre-qualification, with its tender documentation, with its own format of how you pre-qualify and what methods. So in this whole gamut of complex phenomena, I want the esteemed panel to individually present maybe a case study wise or from their opinion and their experience of the world as to what should government projects be from the conception stage. Should it be a bureaucratic or a political conception merely, or could it have public participation? Should it be an idea that is generated by the end user, that is the government or the entity, and then percolated down through a contracting mechanism laid down by the CVC guidelines so that the architect becomes the vendor and he subscribes to that? Within these parameters, how do we evolve a practice for the country that is transparent, utilitarian, and is based on excellent merit, that we don't end up making the kind of shabby buildings we have been doing in mass construction, though we have elements of excellence coming up in private enterprises and iconic landmark buildings across the country, how do we create large government projects with an excellent, transparent design environment? I would ask Prem to start this conversation, followed by Shimul, and then Premnath, and then Mahesh.
I'm sorry to interrupt here, Sujit. Can we have the first poll question before we go forward?
Sure, you could. You could.
Thank you. Yeah.
The question here was, should state and the union government be allowed to call for tenders where architect bid for services much below the Council of Architecture prescribed norms and submit the EMD as vendors in the name of competition? By competition, I'm not saying competition as per the law prescribed, but competitive bidding. Prem, you can start off while the poll comes on screen.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you say I should start now?
Yes, sir, you can start. The poll will come on the screen. People just have to click yes or no on that.
Okay. I believe there is much that is problematic with how the Indian government commissions architectural services. And what I will do is I'll speak using the Central Vista redevelopment as a reference, as that is unquestionably the most significant public project of recent times. But the problems defined here also apply at the state government level. And I'll address 6 issues. The first is vision. Now, before a project is launched, even before the architect comes into the picture, there should be a vision of what the project is about. Like if you're putting up an educational campus, you should have a vision on what education is. If you're putting up a museum, you should have a vision on what public culture should be and how the museum contributes to it. So in this case, the Central Vista is the epicenter of our democracy, and there should have been a vision of democracy, the relationship between government and people, and all this should have been in the design brief, but nothing was defined. It was left to architects. When projects are defined without a vision, they tend to be transactional rather than visionary. And we see that in the kind of schemes Sujit's referred to, like Swachh Bharat or Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, where the reporting is only by numbers. There's no assessment on how it builds community, vibrancy, possibility. And there isn't even a consequent feedback loop on performance after the initial numbers are reached. The second point is weightage given to design. A vibrant culture throughout history, we have seen, always has great design. That's one of its indispensable features. And government as the major patron sets the tone. So design should be the priority and not financials. Now, there are 2 ways in which design can be brought into the picture. One is where design is everything in the assessment, and this is what happens in competitions. And I believe very important public projects should be open competitions so that they cast as wide a net for ideas as possible. And that breeds a dynamic design culture where new ideas are brought into the fold through younger firms. Larger firms, because of the overheads they have to maintain, the habits they have picked up over the years, tend to be more conservative. And this is how you breed a dynamic design culture. Now, people object, saying that it means you might get a firm that wins a competition that doesn't have the technical capacity to execute a large project. But this is an obstacle that has been overcome. There are precedents where a condition is that to win the contract, to execute the design, if you don't have the experience yourself, you have to associate with a large firm who brings those skills to the table. Now, every project cannot be a competition. So the other way to approach used is what's called QCBS, a quality and cost-based selection. And here there's a weightage between qualitative issues and the financial issues. And the financial is usually restricted to about 20 to 30% of the weight. It was 20% at Central Vista. But of the remaining 80%, only 40% was given to design, and the balance 40%, the other half, was given to issues like financials, track record, and staff strength measured quantitatively rather than qualitatively of the participating firm. Now, this has two problems. One is it is reducing design to a minority status. And you have to remember that there's no threshold of 40%. The next project could bring it down to 30% or 20% or whatever. The other is it opens the opportunity for that 40% on the firm's track record, etc., the assessment to be tailored to suit a desired firm, to do it in advance. Our firm has participated in QCBS selection procedures, but in every one that we have participated in, once a firm is shortlisted, it is on an equal footing, and all the technical evaluation, the full 80% goes towards design. So here we are making design a minority issue in awarding public work. The third is if you're asking for a design, you have to allow sufficient time. Good design, we all know, requires sufficient time. In Central Vista, the notice inviting tender was issued on 7th September 2019, and the letter awarding the work to the successful architect was issued on 18th October 2019. So in less than 6 weeks, expressions of interest were submitted, evaluated, architects shortlisted, shortlisted architects prepared designs, those designs were evaluated and the contract awarded. In fact, the architects were shortlisted to prepare designs on 23rd September. So effectively, the preparation, submission, evaluation of designs and award of work all happened in less than 3.5 weeks. No justification for this hurry has been offered. And these short timeframes tend to lead to facile solutions oriented toward visual impact instead of deep design thinking and creativity. The fourth point is there needs to be clarity of scope. In the Central Vista project, there was a mixture of urban design scope and architectural design scope without a clear separation. In fact, at the pre-bid meeting, some of the firms participating suggested a project like this warrants separation into 2 stages. The first is a competition purely for the urban design. And the second is maybe not just one competition, but a multitude of competition for the architectural work that comes under the urban design guidelines generated from the results of the first competition. So on top of the problem of insufficient time, a lack of scope, clarity also leads to facile solutions and arbitrary processes. The fifth is who assesses design. If you really want to attract the best design talent to participate in the process, you need to have assessors or jurors whose eminence and ethics will attract this talent. And this panel needs to be done in advance with the announcement of the project itself. In the Central Vista case, there were 7 jurors to assess the design, but their names were not declared in advance in the notice inviting tender. And if you look at them, not one of them is a recognized thought leader in design. If you just measure that by peer-reviewed publication of work, design awards, or competitions won. The other thing is that is typically the case is that conflict of interest should be avoided, and no one from the entity organizing the competition should be part of the assessors. But in this case, CPWD was organizing the project, they're running the project, and 2 senior officials from CPWD were part of the assessment panel. I would suggest an organization like Council of Architecture should organize a panel of architects who are recognized through peer review as thought leaders in their field. And every eminent architect should commit to serve on at least one assessment panel or competition jury per year. And the last point is on transparency of process and product. In matters of public interest, it is said that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Here there was secrecy of process, the whole evaluation process, nothing has been disclosed. Even the cost has been kept a secret. And in fact, in the notice inviting tender, although it is the custom of public projects to declare an estimated cost, here no cost was declared. And in fact, this creates a serious problem in how the financial bids are evaluated in the QCBS process, which I do not have time to explain, but it has introduced a degree of arbitrariness in the whole process. Then besides secrecy of process, there's been secrecy of product. Till date, there's been no disclosure of analysis of needs, designs, costs. Nothing has been put in the public domain for scrutiny by the public, There have been no public consultations on the project. Public design is a matter of public culture and of public memory, and it is essential that its commissioning and ratification is as public a process as possible. Secrecy, once it's established as a precedent, allows other agendas to take root, some of them not necessarily in the public interest. So to conclude, I would say that we are far from a desired situation in the commissioning of public architecture. And Central Vista as a precedent shows we are heading in the wrong direction. And if architects do not want to be sidelined even further in public architecture than what they are already, the profession urgently needs to mobilize on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Prem. That was very concise and to surgical incision across the project. You made very valid points here. So while completely understanding that this was not a competition, and if it was a competition, you write about the panel, but since it was not a competition, the execution agency, like I told about CPWD and BCC, they have a lot of freedom within their CVC guidelines set to call for a tender. You are very right when you say the 40% for weightage of quantitative strength, not qualitative, the quantitative strength, which became part of the 80%, should actually be only considered in the pre-qualification, like who qualifies with those quantitative parameters are only assessed. And design should have been 80%. That gives transparency and more credence to design. In this case, like you rightly said, we have a tiger by the tail. If this trend is to continue, what is going to stop the design taking only, within the QCBS, design taking only 10% tomorrow and 70% of it being more of the organizational strength, the number of people and amount of staff and infrastructure disposal. So very true, the quality of design might get stuck. Having said that, I think that actually brings to the second point of the poll. Is it fair that architects are made to do free design? I say free design means it's like a pitch. Look at my design. Like I said, look at my sari, or look at my chair I built, like a product. Look at my design. I have made a good design. So is it fair that architects are made to do free design and hundreds of man-days wasted across the country every day? I'm saying hundreds of man-days every day across the country with firms doing the design for making the pitch as part of the technical bid. Is it fair that this process continues? But that is also what is not in the competitive arena does not have a juror. And what does not have a juror is basically departmental people or maybe one external sitting on the panel to give credence to that panel, maybe a professor from some SP or one of these architecture colleges sitting on the panel. And what happens is that it is more like a closed-door decision of who to award. The design excellence still suffers. So next poll is it fair that architects make free designs across the country in competing for current government tenders as a part of their technical bid? Now coming to the next speaker, I would request architect Shimul Javeri Kadri for the excellent amount of work they have done across the country and for the bird's eye view perspective that you have over development, right? To me, the discovery of India building and all stands as some of the icons we looked up when we started studying architecture. Today, we look across country for government buildings to be inspiring for the young generation to come up and look up, wow, I want to be an architect. By looking at that building, I don't see that happening. Shimul, please, your opinions on this.
Sujit, firstly, let me correct you. I have nothing to do with the discovery of India building. My father-in-law designed that. I have a separate firm. We'll get into that later. So, you know, I think one of the major issues that would really help this matter would be if we had a strong governance structure for architecture. We do have the IIA, we do have the Council of Architecture, Unfortunately, the norms established by the Council of Architecture on how architects should perform, how architects should charge, have been diluted, and they're extremely irrelevant today. Percentage fees are no longer kind of relevant. There are so many other ways to charge. All this needs to be discussed, kind of manualized and mandated. And if we had a much more powerful governance, a governing body, not only across the country, but also having chapters in every state, every city that were far more influential, I think a lot of our problems would be much, much simpler. One, definitely valuation or bidding for projects is something that was never the case in the earlier days when, as you say, in the time of discovery of India, and all the other really relevant government projects that were built, it was far more, design was the major protagonist and cost was not. So if you unify cost, if you kind of have a very definite methodology for cost, you're much more likely to create that even playing field. But so to me, that's one of the most important issues. Prem has done a fabulous job of going over the methodology by which this should be done. There's a second, and I think the Central Vista has brought up the demons in all of us, because I think to begin with, a very important aspect needs to be discussed, which is vision, which is something that Prem has already spoken about. But also with any government project, I think the discussion of whether the project is sustainable, whether the project is actually relevant in today's 21st century, that needs to be discussed through a very multidisciplinary committee. In today's day and age, with the kind of social media, with the kind of technology that we have, how relevant is brick and mortar at that scale? Once that relevance is established, is it sustainable? Is it inclusive? Is it equitable? To me, these are three really important issues that need to be discussed on any government project. And I think a panel or a committee that represents people across multidisciplines would really be able to take a call on something like that. The other issue that I think is extremely important is that I feel there are very few arbitrators of good design available. And good design, as we know, is critical, whether it's a government project, whether it's an infrastructure project. To me, one of the most relevant things about the Central Vista project would have been if it had been done in the way that Prem talked about, which is looked at, firstly, whether it's relevant. Secondly, if any part of it is relevant, a master plan would have been, the best thing to put together. And thereafter, what an opportunity for the entire country, for the architects of this country, to be able to participate in smaller aspects of that project, to be able to break it down into smaller aspects and make it available for really good talent to be able to build a plethora of different buildings, kind of guided by a strong master plan. I'm not saying absolute diversity. I'm saying guide it with a strong master plan, and you would have gotten great architecture coming out of there. What a seriously fabulous opportunity that would have been. This with, when you have a large project that's given to one bidder, so to say, the outcome is bound to be almost fascist, because, to me, it's like marching soldiers across that Central Vista. When you have such uniformity and repetition, of course, apart from the fact that you have a fair amount of irrelevance. The other thing that I'd really like to talk about is just the kind of ecosystem of design that we've created in the country. I feel we don't have enough jurors, enough arbitrators, enough understanding at this point of what is good design. And if all of us wrote a little more, if there was much more design relevance in popular media, government officials to regular people to citizens would be able to understand better what is good design and be able to participate and raise their voice against some of the kind of absolute mediocrity that we see being touted as design. And the last point I'd like to make is that a lot of the projects that you were speaking about, Sujit, the large infrastructure projects, housing, toilets, all of this, none of it is relevant in educational institutions. Most of our educational institutions, projects are still, whenever one goes as a juror, projects are not, students are not being made capable or are not thinking about the relevance or relevant projects in today's context. So I think education and ecosystem of design, governance through architectural governance, these are some of the major points that I think would really help create better government projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Shimul. That was very nice. In fact, when I talked about Discovery of India building, it's like I'm talking of a young student coming from Bhopal, walks into Bombay. And you see this building, you haven't seen anything like that. You're a first-year student of architecture. So irrespective of the authorship of the building, this is in public domain. It's a public building. Today, if you look at the architecture of the public domain, it doesn't go through merit or churning of excellence in design. It has other parameters. And like you rightly said, we have touted too much of mediocrity all across the country. There's a lot of mediocrity in public enterprise and buildings. Though, of course, the intent of the bureaucrat or the person sitting there is to bring in the best standards, best practices, best designers. It is not that they want something mediocre. But the plethora of laws that has been put together ensures that it stays mediocre, or good design doesn't surface. And that therefore, the question, and that is the poll 3, is should large government projects be awarded only, and the question is only, large government projects be awarded only through competitions or L1 tenders on QCBS? That's the poll. I would now like to invite Architect Mahesh Iyer has some fantastic points. Actually, I would have liked to break the chain and put him there. But then since in the order you've said Premnath next, so Architect Premnath, you may kindly give your this thing briefly in about 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and then we will go to Architect Mahesh Iyer and then open it for discussions, because a lot of points that both Prem and Shimul have said about the council and how the strength has to happen would rightly be answered by Architect Mahesh Iyer, because he stands at a place where he sees both sides of the coin and would be the appropriate one. We'll come to him immediately after Premnath. Prem, please unmute yourself.
Hi. You're asking me to respond on this? Hello?
We are asking you to make your opening statement on how government projects should be awarded, large government projects.
My friends, let me tell you, I think I'm the longest in the practice going through this conflict of what we're discussing today. When I passed in 1965, story was same. There were some complaints about competitions, about architects undercutting, and not fair competition be happening, and talking about IIA not being active on that. There was no Council of Architecture, anything like that. The story is not changed. The story is still the same after 55 years of practice. is becoming worse than the contrary. There is a large, big competition, and today life has become very fast and pace has become very strong now, and almost everybody is now hungry to get the best slice out of whatever available. I must say we have indiscipline among ourselves. We must blame architects ourselves for what is happening. We come to the state of situation now that we've been being exploited by the government departments and the private sector, or what do you call that? I remember old time, Charles Correa and Stein were the two people who could command their price, who could demand their price. Now, you cannot possibly say, okay, we must get fees as per council architecture, this time, whatnot. So you'll be able to command your fees in any profession, doctor, medical, lawyer, legal people. They command their value, they command their fees and command their, they don't have worry about competition. I remember Stein was asked to quote one of the public sector project, and he gave a very curt reply. My fee shall be as per the Council of, as per the Institute of Architects. That's all. 3-line letter, as simple as that. And he got the job. If you want a good architect and he got discipline and he got regulation to follow over there, I'm sure that was the kind of time was there what you gone through that. Today, that thing exists and doesn't exist. It does exist, of course. I should say that, world over, the prosperity of a society, of a community, or a nation, or a state is recognized by the architecture of the country, architecture of the city, architecture of the people. Now, it depends on the kings and the masters who create some kind of beautiful architecture. For Shah Jahan, who desired to make a monument for his beloved and put a beautiful architecture of kind of monument of more than 400 years back. Similarly, it was some king who wanted to make a beautiful city called Jaipur. It happened 200 years back. It was Jawaharlal Nehru who wanted to have a beautiful city, and he invited Kabir to do Chandigarh. They might have been masters. It was Wellington's viceroy who invited architect Luton to design New Delhi. And they didn't come from the kings and queens. They were invited by that. Now, he had no experience of doing master planning. Nobody had master planning that size of 500 acres, 5,000 acres of putting New Delhi capital city. But probably he was supposed to be a very good architect, capable actor at that time. Did a wonderful job. So you can say that there is talent available among big, small, young, or they don't have to be necessarily having 20 or 30 experience and big kind of fortune or big capabilities. It has to be basically on the basis of your abilities of people over there. But by and large, architects are good in the top ranking category. It depends on who is comfortable with whom and how the private assignments are given. In government projects, because we public money involved over there, a lot of people have a say, like you may be talking about Central Vista and ifs and buts, why not, thing like that, question answer. People will be questioning, okay, why not follow over there? That's a different story. But point is basically that we should possibly, I don't think between you sitting over here with maybe 100 people watching us can debate tent over there. We have a council, we have an IIA. If they can't do it, then probably we're wasting our time. They are our mouthpieces over there. We should possibly push them over to be able to do. Why can't they possibly push and face the government or the authorities, create reforms and bring some better kind of environment, like medical council get a lot of crowd on that, bar council a lot of crowd on that. Why not our council? That should be the place we should possibly address it and stress upon them, rather than me and you debating. That's all. That won't make much difference on that. But let me tell you that, honestly speaking, architects are losing their values. I find the quality of architects among us, the new generation, is not very good, not very kind of credible. With the result today, the time has changed. The design build has come now. The clients who have had a lot of money with them over there, and they want to be sure about that project and value over there, they're looking for a good builder who got resources, who has got architects, who got engineers, who got people, who got manpower, who got a kind of liaison work, taking approval, things on this, that, management resources, and you can put up and assemble the team. You can assemble a whole team and do that. And that's the future, what we foresee in time to come, design and build. So architects are working as builders now, as contractors now, because contractors are becoming smarter and they're able to engage leading architects. Nothing new, it happened world over. Like the king has a good project manager and he has the good contractor and he has a good team of architects and designers world over. It happened in Dubai, it happened many other places. So it requires basically, if you are capable, I'm sure you can command your price, you can demand your price. Can't be grumbling. There's all right, the government has got its own issues, own problems. They have got CVC, they have got public opinion, they have public scrutiny over there, they have the government officers are there, they are human people like you and me, and they're scared, they don't want to take responsibility of selection here, there, but they made some formula norms and they follow quality and cost basis over there. Sometimes quality gets, sometimes cost gets. By and large, they get cost because they are saying worry about cost in any case. But point is, we are, as a nation, we don't have our rulers, our administrators, our masters, our politicians, our governments. They don't have pride of creating a great architecture in the country. That's why we're losing the quality. If they are conscious about that, I'm sure everything will come up over there. And depending on them, how you make them conscious, how to make them conscious that they need to have a good architecture as a showpiece for the country. Now, talking about central vista of the context over there, not to comment on that, this was a great opportunity for the government to showcase Indian architecture. Place, we are creating monument, creating something and some kind of a unique place over there. Today, bringing in a similar kind of boxes of kind of stone and thing like that, what you call that the courtyard thing, architecture in stone and thing like that. That's not great. I think Indian architect capability of making something much more beyond that. I could have made a showpiece, but that requires time, thinking, evaluation, for some time, not a rush up over there. Government has its own kind of priorities. You can't blame them. They have some agenda to do. Possibly they want to show that India is progressing and India is making good kind of. So they want to say something that they want can't be left behind. It's okay. It's all right. But it means bringing awareness among the society, among our masters, among the rulers, among our politicians, among government. That will make difference. Even now, some of the departments, like some public work department, I just gave example of Housing Board in Madhya Pradesh. They have fixed up a fees 2.5% as a Council of Architecture. And they invite competition and give the job to the best guy. Indian Oil Corporation that does over there, they invite offers from everybody first. People have offered, they can make the offer to have a fees over there. They make average of that, which becomes more than 5 to 7%. And then they make a tender and they put a benchmark that the technique fees is so much, which gives it an opportunity at a hands-on fees to the designer consultant or participant. So they want good people to participate, who are well paid, and good quality job to be done. And some departments are there who have very miserable fee. They think, no, doesn't make much difference over there. So it depends between good and bad in the existing part of the world over there. All is required over there that architects need to become more conscious about that, about quality of their own ability. And all we need over there to push our people who are reformers, who are masters, our government, our politicians, to be aware about architecture. There need to be broad awareness of architecture. That will make difference. I hope I have done my talk.
You did a great job cutting across kind of nearly a 3/4 of a century of the Indian history of architecture. And you had a very valid point. Central Vista was a great opportunity for the government of India to make a showcase of excellent Indian architecture and talent. However, the summary of your points, actually, it's very uncanny. I wrote some 5 questions for poll. Very uncanny how every speaker comes to the next question. So I said the major government projects, everybody agrees, is a competition route is better, because in a competition route, what happens is there are eminent jurors. There is a brief which is described and discussed, and it is open to everybody to participate with the idea level. If the idea is good and doesn't have the bandwidth to operate the idea, you can associate with a larger firm. So therefore, you have larger credence to design in the competition. So let us take the large format out. Most major projects like what Prem talked about now, should smaller government projects, I'm talking of 100, 200 crores, maybe 300 crores, starting from 10 crores onwards, where everybody is now asking for technical bids to come with design solutions, should smaller government projects be awarded as it is done currently on a L1 or a QCBS? Or should it be on a merit of concept alone on the fees that is already fixed by Council of Architecture? So there is no question of any EMD or bid. The design phase is fixed that the government cannot pay anything less or more. And maybe if the COS fees are irrelevant today or it's too high or the markets have changed, maybe it can revise itself. But we have a standard scale of practice. And each government, be it central government or state government, or they are the PSUs, they say, we will evaluate you only on design and concept, the strength of design. Post that, the financial award of that will only be on a strict norm. So there is no question of undercutting. There is no question of non-transparent background reaches or behind the back kind of settings that happen. There is absolutely a transparent mechanism. Your design is good, and the choice of the design, whether it is good or not, could be done by a panel which is duly constituted of the place of the senior architects, like what Prem said. At least once a year, you should be sitting on a panel to evaluate more across than just be participating as from the participant side. On the evaluatory front, we can create a panel of very high quality designers. We can easily, I have worked with about 100 good architects whom I can vouch for as excellent in terms of their design ethos, in terms of the credibility, in terms of the strength of knowledge, in the way they approach design. Very different from the foreign architects, mind you. I have also worked with foreign architects, but the way there are some architects in India look at the design and they arrive at the solution is so beautiful. If they could be adjudicating the choice of that transparently, and the fees is fixed. So that's the poll number 4. Should smaller projects be on L1 QCBS, or should it be purely on design merit and fixed fees of the Council of Architecture? And this question therefore brings to the biggest dawing on technicalities and legalities regarding this. Architect Mahesh Iyer, who has had a history of long practice with some excellent work done in the government as well as in the private field. Architect Mahesh Iyer, your opening remarks before we get into the debate mode. Thank you.
You're asking whom? Premnath? You asked me to respond on it?
No, sir. I'm asking.
Thank you, friends. Premnath, Shimol, Prem,
Okay.
and of course, Sujit.
Welcome.
Shall I talk?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
The floor is yours.
I know that the country's architects are going through a very great heartburn, mainly because there is a feeling, whether right or wrong, that the two bodies, the private body, 1917, 100 years back, it was started, Indian Institute of Architects, and 1972, the Council of Architects. There is a feeling that these two bodies have not protected the profession sufficiently well. There is a great amount of feeling, and partially or largely it may be correct. But I should say that although I am not a custodian of the Council of Architects, being a member of the very special committee for preparing the manual of practice, professional practice, the committee in the 10-member committee in the last 15 months have met 58 times, 3 hours each time. So we have almost done 172 hours on the manual preparation. And I want to inform you that if our manual, which is likely to be published for architects in another two months or maximum 3 months, will definitely alleviate the heartburns and give a lot of comfort to architects who are like our eminent panelists suggested, case of undercoating, case of all kinds of favoritism, and case of not getting the architect for the right job, for the right project, and so on. So there are so many heartburns. So this manual is supposed to address all these things, and we think we have done a good job. We had a lot of scrutiny committee sitting on the manual. There are about 80, 90 people have sat, and what I want to tell you is that as everybody said, most government agencies and PSUs do not follow the COA guideline. They simply follow the CBC CPWD guideline, where it is an architect is selected by tender, lowest rate, and not, of course, of late EPC projects and some CVC CPWD projects, they are going by QCBS. But most projects are selected by who is quoting the lowest instead of finding who is giving the best design. As Premnath very beautifully said, we don't have visionaries in government who want good architecture, good cities, unlike the Sheikh Mohammed of Dubai or the Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, who visualize these two cities like the Montpellier, the city of Montpellier, the city of Valencia. They had visualists as mayors who visualized a designer and inclusive urban growth. But unfortunately, the Britishers left very good railway system to India. They left a very good military. They left a very good postal service. But unfortunately, Britishers never left a very good urban plan. They didn't leave a good PWD. They didn't do it. Unfortunately, that is why our railways are still one of the best in the world. So unfortunately, we have been driven to a situation where we are under the clutches of the stupidity or inefficiency or insensitivity of the government agencies who think that architects can quote and be selected. Whereas the same department in Kerala government, we have about 36 cases in Supreme Court. You know how many crores they have paid? 54 crores to few lawyers. There is no quotation. So architecture also is an IPR, intellectual property right. So we are also like the lawyers. We are also bringing in intellectual property. We are not selling any product. So unfortunately, we architects are driven to such a miserable situation. In this regard, the Council of Architects' new president who took over last year formulated a team of 4 professionals, including me, and 4 council members and the president and secretary to formulate what would be supposed to be a net zero defect document, which will ensure and enable all architects, from budding architects to the stalwarts like Premnath and Prem Chandavarkar to Kadri, to be satisfied with the document. It's a fantastic document as far as I am concerned. So we have fixed, for example, we have stipulated architects can be selected by EOI nomination method, by interview method. These two, interview and nomination method, are method 1 and 2. They are only suitable for private sector. Then we have a EOI system. And then we have a RFP system, a request for proposal. So EOI can itself end with the selection of an architect, mostly in private sector. But an RFP document can have without competition and with competition, 2 ways of selecting. So competition, we have split it up into 4 competitions. One, open ideas competition, where it's a prize money which is not going to be built, like monuments, or like some idea some mayor of a municipality wants to this thing. or a Aga Khan charitable trust want to do. So open ideas competition is selected purely on design and prize money. Then we have suggested single stage open competition, which is QCBS. Because single stage open competition, there will be a lot of people coming in, so we will have to filter them. So it's a very large document. Each competition runs into 20, 30 pages of detail, how there should be an empowered committee, how there should be a jury, how there should be a specialist expert, how the meeting should be conducted in a transparent way, how it should be advertised, how it should be announced in the press, how the product should be, design entry should be exhibited. So nobody can cheat, no government agency can do favoritism. Of course, our politicians and bureaucrats are smart enough to circumvent these norms. Then the third type of competition is single stage limited competition. And then the fourth type is two-stage open competition. In the last two stages, we are suggesting to fix the fees, because one entire volume 4 in this competition, five volume competition is for fees. The entire volume is minimum fees. I can assure you the bare minimum fees for a 100 crore project for a comprehensive service is nothing less than 5.2%, 5.8%. So it's a elaborate fees. You only have to, the advantage for you is that you can show this manual. It's a government manual. You can show it to any client and say, this is a fees fixed by government. So it is easy to bargain from that instead of bargaining from, like Sujit said, 1% upward or 1 rupee upward. So we have fixed a fee band, which we are trying to get it regulated. As you know, the Council of Architects Act of 1972, the Act is governed by the Parliament. The rules are governed by the government of India, and the regulations are governed by the Council of Architects. So we are trying to bring it under a regulation, this manual, some portion, not everything. Some portion of this manual of practice will come under regulation, which needs government approval. Once it is regulated, it will be tenable in the court of law. Tomorrow, any architect can go and say, go to the court and say that the competition has been conducted against the manual. Or we can say that the architect's fees is being fixed not in line with the fee band issued by the manual. So all these aspects are being covered, have been covered, and I'm sure will be covered. And our president has assured, Habib Khan is a very dynamic man. He has assured that at least 30-40% of this manual will come under, which are called code of practice, will come under regulation. Once it is regulated by Government of India, then it is tenable in the court of law, and architects can definitely get more fees than what they get. And architects can definitely be assured that any competition conducted not in line with the competition guideline, you can write a letter to Council of Architects who have a professional services board. Of course, I am a member of the IAA professional services board, but in the COA, we have a professional services and dispute resolution board. They will take it up. So that I hope, I feel, I believe that the days of fake, fraudulent competitions are going to be over. I believe, I sincerely hope. Of course, in a country where dowry is a crime, people are paying dowry. So like that, in spite of this manual, in spite of getting government approval of the portion of the manual, which are under the name code, not guideline. The guidelines are not statutory. The code is regulatory, which is approved by Government of India. We already have 2-3 meetings with Government of India. They have said, you bring the manual, we will see which of them, because they have to vet it through Central Vigilance Commission and other people. And so we are hoping that the new manual of professional practice will discard most of the fears. But I should take an anticipatory bail here that in spite of all these manuals and professional practice and minimum fee band and agreement format. We have agreement format for comprehensive practice as well as architectural practice. We have agreement format. We have indemnity clauses. We have professional liability insurance clauses. We have intellectual properties right clauses. We have Copyright Act. We have covered all possible actions, provisions in this manual. But in spite of, I'm again and again I'm saying that in our country, somebody was telling me, my friend who is a DGP, that the Indian Penal Code is sufficient to book all the culprits and put them behind the bars, but that is not happening. So in spite of all this code of practice and regulatory approval from Government of India, we can fail. I am not saying we will, this will be the end of the problem. We can fail. So I think I don't want to waste too much of time of eminent people like Kadri, Premnath and Prem Chandavarkar, my good friend. And I think I have more or less touched almost all the points here, but there are many more. There is one last item that I think I will expect Sujit to rake up the issue. I will answer that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Architect Mahesh. You have touched upon a very pressing point. I'm very glad that the manual of practice has gone through so many hours of meetings between people. And you said there's an empowered committee of 10 people who have done this. And with your experience, I'm sure it would have done a good job. And I was just impressed to know that there's such a work effort. And the inputs from this, maybe you could carry it back to the committee in case you come up with some suggestions here you find which you might not have addressed or overlooked. And if we come up with something that you find is tenable. Like you said, the code is regulatory and the guidelines are suggestive. So that is mostly to lay the format. For the competition parts, there has always been a good norm that we followed. Our problem is the non-competition route, the route that takes up where you are looking at L1 QCBS basis or one which is done by purely on a technical bid and some evaluatory criteria and purely on an L1 cost basis. So those are the ones that are in conflict with the laws of OA and the code of conduct of IIA. In those primarily are what interventions are required. For example, and I want to bring this point, the IIIT Ongole is a 258-acre campus in Andhra Pradesh in Ongole. And it was like a limited competition or limited tender and pre-qualification was very high. And finally, 3 architects, us from Lucknow, Chennai, they all competed. The best design was chosen. So they put it onto a very new trend, like the Swiss challenge method. They said a reverse auction. In my practice of 30 years, we never heard this. So it is a state government law which says that any fees over 1 crore will go for a reverse auction, which meant that the other 2 people whose design was rejected, and they come to know by the end of the presentation, everybody knows whose design has got a little positive bend. So the other 2 then sat down and underbid. Every 15 minutes, they bid the price down. And at the end of the bidding time, they had brought it down to what, for the whole campus, a price what we would charge for one single dwelling unit, one residence architecture. Now, there is no, we could complain to the council and take disciplinary action against those architects. But why we did not look at that is because they are all a part of the fraternity. And the problem is emanating from the fraternity. It is the fraternity which is trying to live up to the law of the land. The law of the land in Andhra Pradesh states, this is how it should be done. So we don't have a say that we have to, if we want to participate in a large engineering college campus, we go and fulfill the norms of the tender. But those are in direct contravention to the laid down rules of practice as by the IIA and by the council. So the council should develop, apart from the recommendatory status, the tool and the teeth to go after these state governments. For example, there was the state of Tamil Nadu once came up with a contract. The state of Karnataka comes up with contract completely against that what is written in the council's practice. So either you don't participate, let somebody who is participating do it, or you participate and the council should come in with force, like somebody said, Sandeep Chawla said, when will we as an organization, as a body of professionals, develop the necessary tooth to make sure that governments themselves do not become arbitrarily breakers of the rule created by the parliament? That is the major question here. Anybody would like to answer, pick this point further and discuss? Okay.
I think if you have an open market, you'll always get these sort of unrealistic kind of bids in undercutting each other, especially in an environment like India, where there's a lot of opportunity to make money on a project other than through the fees you earn as a professional. And we all know that people who quote very low fees couldn't possibly survive at those fees. So there must be some other way of getting money. So I think you're going to get that. I think what we need to drive is a debate on what the vision of government projects should be. And the fact that perhaps there should be like a minimum threshold of fees that below which no one can quote. And the profession needs to articulate that it's a win-win situation if the architect earns a fee that sustains their life. We're not talking about architects exploiting to just make millions or something like that, but just make professional practice a viable proposition. I mean, no one had asked people to bid to produce a car at 50 rupees, because that's not possible. And similarly, the government should understand that going below a certain scale of fees is just not possible, and you're going to breed corruption as a result. But I think the profession needs to drive a debate on that.
Wonderful. So you have touched a very raw point. The government does regulate the fees in one. They put the maximum permitted fees. For example, you take an NBCC tender, there will be says maximum 0.5% or 0.75%. Their own PMC charges are 3% to 5% to 6% by they take. And the whole infrastructure of NBCC runs on that PMC or CPWD or for any of the central government agencies. So what happens is the architect has to do all the work at the minimum cost. So they have put an upper ceiling instead of putting a minimum. Nobody should quote less than 0.5 or less than 0.7. They say you cannot quote over 0.5 or 0.7. So it ends up creating a kind of an ecosystem where everybody quotes as low as possible. And like you rightly said, there has to be other methods to compensate for the loss you create, because you cannot do that practice at that kind of a price. So with that, we have a question that our practices today in India, and this is very personal that I look at from various aspects, okay, are usually one person and a pencil driven. It says that I'm the architect and mine is a proprietary firm. It also sometimes becomes a partnership firm. And partnership may last, may not last through the project, in between the project. Halfway through the project, it might lose its credence. So the practice of architecture that has changed over the last 20 years to become multidisciplinary, have larger formats within itself, would need funding and finance from the banks at times to oversee certain larger projects. Does not qualify for any of this because it doesn't come under the corporate ambit, because the council's rules itself does not recognize a private limited or a public limited firm fully run by architects. What I'm saying is, if two architects were to become partners, like a pop and mom shop or husband-wife shop, it is permitted. But if the two were to come up and form a private limited company with liabilities to ensure governance and to also ensure that people below, the employees, could also rise up to be directors in the company and corporatize the whole process of design practice, so that there is not just a legacy of one name, but there's a legacy of a corporate identity of, let's say, for what we do is green building. Somebody would do like Zaha Hadid's work. So the idea of making entities as individuals or as partners are acceptable in the realm of architectural practice. When the same people form a company for its more governance structure, more accountability, more accounting practices, more transparency in operations, letting the people downline after working for 5 to 10 years to get elevated to be directors and be promoters within the company, that is not permitted. So the last poll on this is, The practice of architecture in India is mostly proprietorship and partnerships, like pop and mom shops. Should it be allowed to grow to a private or a limited company with all the promoters as architects? The mandatory case is it cannot be a financier or a lawyer or an MBA taking it. All architects, instead of just being partnerships, can it be corporate for a better governance, for a better employee growth and better succession? When somebody at the top dies, there's a succession in the project and there's continuity of projects so that the project doesn't suffer because the lead architect no longer exists. This is poll number 5. And with that, I finished that. It is open for debate as to whether it is a good practice, unless we make the architectural practice a strong practice, and unless this strong practice forms a strong association of organization like the IAA and gives it a lot of tooth and power. Unless we become powerful, we are open for exploitation. What rightly said by Prem, that if we are weak and we go down without claiming or deserving the fees that we asked for, just to say that the council has prescribed the fees might not be good enough reason for the government or a client to pay us. So that needs a lot of tooth, and it needs you need to have a battery of lawyers representing you. You'll have to have a battery of cost accountants working with you, material consultants, facade consultants, PMC guys within the company, with HVAC, electrical, mechanical services within the company. So the structure of the company would now goes beyond what the council thinks as a proprietary firm or a partnership firm. So this, in a way, is a debate whether it is allowed, why it should be allowed, why it should not be allowed, and it's open for your suggestions as to whether that would make the practices more strong. Today, if you look at the 2 major airports that are coming up, one is the Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj Airport in Bombay, the Navi Mumbai Airport. That is proposal coming from Zahad's office. We have the Bangalore Airport, which is from SOM. So these practices have created the bandwidth that it can operate beyond the time of the lead architect or the principal architect's lifetime. And that, I think, is one of the changes we might also need to look. Prem, you wanted to say something. Please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself. Prem, you will have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Bottom left.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Now, please.
I must tell you that it's important now that today the business is becoming very larger and becoming very comprehensive. The architect firms are expected to be all in one. A lot of public sector projects, government projects particularly, public sector projects, they're asking architects to be solo person to become, as an overall organization, architecture, structure, MEP, your landscape, site development, environment, all put together one roof. As an architect, whether he has got team in-house or he has association with a proper legal documentation over there. Idea is that clients are finding sick coordinating with too many people, too many agencies. They want a single window, one person who can be responsible where the buck stops over here. So it is very important that the companies, the architects should become a kind of consortium, a group of people over there, architects, engineers, I have just possibly associates who are permanently with them, directly and directly involved in that, or in-house over there. That's a future. Mind you, something else. In a private sector, a lot of new demand is coming, design and build. Asking architects, can you design and build it? That means he becomes a big contractor. Now, architects have all the capabilities of designing and having resources about multiple contractors only requires a good management or project management. Then a question comes financial resources. That we need to have a strong financial resources to be able to possibly pitch for kind of jobs over there. And there's a future. Our it's becoming different. Architecture practice is becoming business of architecture. Think of that. With that happening over there, what kind of thing we're talking about, of a philosophy and this and that and norms or thing over there. Then architecture is becoming something totally different now. It's becoming very competitive, very open. It's becoming between architects and engineers becoming architecture and after practicing engineering. It's all put together like that. So the new picture of the scenario which is happening over there, it's time for us to look differently with a wider angle, with a wider perspective. We may have become old, possibly. We may not be possibly able to. But a young generation must think about that. Today, I am able to do it. Yes, I'll do design and build. I can do that. I have challenge over there. But I'm talking about basically young people. They must understand that it is not any more profession or old time. It's becoming a business. You have to be a businessman. You have to be all-rounder. You have to be a stronger person. You cannot be crying and booby, ye paisa nahi deta, ye nahi milta hai, fees kam milta hai, ye milta hai. Arey fees demand karta hai, fees command karta hai. Fees mangta nahi hai, fees aata hai. If you're good, bloody people come and pay you. That's what my philosophy is there. That's what I'm surviving like that. So time is changing now. It's time to now possibly think bigger rather than thinking small kind of thing over there. I'm sorry, I'm making a little loud over here in my expression over there, but this is what I see the picture. I hope to share other views from my other colleagues.
You have actually hit the nail on the head, because the poll on this comes back with 80% wanting to corporatize the profession. We have just got the poll reported. 78.6% says corporatize the design, and 21% says that continuous proprietary firms and so on. So I think the larger audience do feel that there is a need to corporatize. Can we get Mahesh Iyer Saab's opinion on this?
Yeah, I had a bitter fight with Sujit yesterday night, so I will make it more sober today. Now, this burning issue that Sujit has rightly raised, it's a fantastic point Sujit raised, is a matter of sub judice as far as Council of Architecture is concerned. Before this 5 o'clock meeting, 5:30, I had the 3-hour meeting with the council, 58th meeting. So I raised this issue because Sujit wanted to raise the issue. So the matter is sub judice. The fact is that there are many eminent architects. Most of them are your friends, Premnath and Prem, and my friends in Bombay, Delhi, Chennai, who are already running architectural practice as private limited companies. They are already running it. It is whether you like it or not, they are already running it. All are good friends, very, very personal friends, my friends and all your friends. They are already running private limited companies and running architectural practice. But then the issue here is, there is it is in the court of law, because the COA has taken a stand 6 years back in 2015. The council, after consulting the then government, have taken a stand that, like the lawyers, the registration is for a lawyer, the bar council membership is for a lawyer. The doctor, the medical council registers a doctor. It doesn't register Fortis Hospital, or it doesn't register Apollo Hospital. The medical council, like Premnath said, has registered a doctor, because like an architect is registered by the council, not an architectural firm can never be registered. In no country it is done, because the fact is that the architecture is an intellectual property, and we have our own domain skill, we have our own copyright act, we have our indemnification in our practice. So the issue here is that, in spite of all that justification, the council has written to government to allow corporatized practice if 80% of the company, the private limited or limited company, are architects, or 80% of the stake, the equity stake is architects. We want to recommend to the council, rather the government, that the council act should be amended, because amendment of a council act is with the parliament. It is not so easy. It is not that council can do it. They have to go for everything, they have to go to the government, and government has to go to the parliament, and parliament is too busy. They are not bothered about these small issues. So there are architects who are already practicing, and there is a High Court case that architects can practice as consultants. There is a High Court case 5-6 years back. There is a case, there is somebody in Delhi, Vora or somebody, has filed a case, and the High Court has said, why not you allow architects to practice as private limited consultants, not architects? So it is not Premnath Architects Private Limited. It is Premnath Consultants Private Limited. It can be Mahesh Architects Private Limited. Cannot be Mahesh Architects Private Limited. Mahesh Consultants Private Limited is allowed as per the High Court order. So it is not that it is not corporatized. And third thing is, Sujit was saying that foreign companies are flooding. Foreign companies are flooding mainly because our Indian clients want to have a white man design their house, or design their hotel, or design their airport. It is not because we don't have the capacity to design, but they want that only a white man should design. That is why the foreign companies are flooding. And as per the present COA norm, no foreign company can sign a drawing for license or certify a drawing. He needs to have a tie-up with an Indian architect. So it is already protecting the interests of an Indian architect. So foreign companies in Singapore, which are in Bangalore and Bombay and Delhi, or in Europe, which are in India and America, they have to go through an Indian architect who has registration with the COA to sign any document. So already it is in place. However, I have taken up this matter with our committee today. We took more than 1 hour to discuss it in detail. I can't explain everything. And committee also feels that we should look into this aspect, discuss with the president and other people, and see how we can make an architectural firm a private limited company. Can we do it if 80% or 100% of the architects are directors or equity holders? Or can we do it in some formula? We are looking at it. But right now, the professional practice manual will not contain what Sujit is suggesting, because the matter is sub judice and the council has no powers to include this corporatization or conduct of professional practice as a private limited company or a limited company. Right now, the CEO has no powers, but we are suggesting, we are trying to find a way out so that this aspect will be passed by the council and eventually approved by the government of India. Thank you.
Fantastic. I suggest that you can start first step 100%. If 2 people are forming partnership and then the partnership is a loosely held entity, maybe 2 people can become a private limited or 3 people private limited, where 100% of the entities are registered architects with the council. That could be the starting point, so that there are nobody else in that firm. That gives you in credence the same thing as a private limited firm, equivalent to a partnership firm, better corporate governance. If Prem has a point to add, Prem Chandavarkar, please.
Yeah, I think partnership, proprietorship on one hand and limited company on the other hand is not the core issue. I mean, and that has wider questions of law that affect not just architects, because we are licensed as natural persons, we are registered. And therefore, how do you contain the chain of responsibility as a natural person is a question. We follow British law on that. So it doesn't just affect architects, it affects chartered accountants, lawyers, and other professions too. But that's getting into a question of law which sidetracks. I think it's very easy to look at corporatization from a business organization point of view, to allow multidisciplinarity, depth of organization, or from the legal liability point of view. I think there's a deeper question we have to ask is, can we have a practice that is design oriented but not personality centric? I think the problem is the personality centric orientation. And actually, we've been trying that in our firm for the last 15 years or so. And we are currently set up as 5 autonomous design teams. And the leader of each team has great autonomy in the kind of design they propose. And the energy that drives the firm is the discussion on design across these 5 teams. So like every Monday we come together as an office and brainstorm on designs. So those kind of things, it's a more complicated issue than I'm making it sound, but I think there is a strong potential there. But to operate in that kind of culture, we have to develop something that is sorely lacking in the culture of Indian architecture. And I agree with the point Premnath said when he said architects have brought a lot of the situation on themselves, and we also need to look internally at critiquing ourselves. And that is our ability to conceptually, philosophically talk about architecture, that in a non-personality centric way, to have a culture of architectural criticism. We don't have that. I see too many architects who expect their judgment to be accepted almost like a matter of faith. And I think we are undermining ourselves when we breathe that culture. And I think we've even lost the ability to talk about the value of architecture to people who are not architects. When we're amongst our community and we use the jargon we're all comfortable with, we can all pat each other on the backs. But we don't have any criticism. People react very badly to critique in India. So we have to learn to do these kind of things. And until we learn to, the culture of design we want in public projects and in all projects is not going to come in.
Thank you. I think you have summed it up very well from the perspective of a singularity or a personal approach to a corporate or to an idea approach, where a practice is an idea rather than the person. And that is a fantastic way to sum it up. And I must thank all the panelists for their views. And I think it has gone a long way for us to also understand that most government projects that begin for political reasons or as a propaganda actually have development at the core of it. The leaders have development at the core, but somehow the lip, and there's a gap between the cup and the lip, where the idea is good, but the execution of the idea and the selection of architects has a long way to go before we can say that we have come to be a civilization that has evolved across time. And today we stand at crossroads looking at the precipice, where the profession is looking at itself and saying, feeling sorry for the way the state of affairs has gone around it, partly to blame the quality of professionals, mostly to blame the kind of policies that has created that quality of professionals. If you could correct the policies, I'm very positive that we will have a country with a fantastic design ethos, and that will lead to a better design environment. When it comes to doing larger projects, maybe the government would have a much.
Can I say something, Sujit?
Sure.
If somebody in your side can sum up the major advices given by Prem and Premnath and Kadri, and including you, of course, you have known a lot of things. If you can give me a 1-pager or 2-pager note, I'll be thankful to you. I will put it up with the committee next time, and maybe we will benefit from it.
Fantastic, sir. Thank you so much. And your presence actually leads credence to the whole meeting. I would now hand over it back to the organizers. You've done a great job. Thank you very much. From our side, we have concluded.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Zinat or Gurdesh, could you take over?
We are indeed delighted to receive so much of information through this platform. I would now like to introduce a highly motivated individual backed by substantial experience of serving the exhibition industry for more than a decade. With all the acquired knowledge, he has come up with a thriving organization that redefines branding and builds businesses by presenting a dynamic and comprehensive platform for the architectural, design, and construction fraternity. I would like to call upon Mr. Gurteej Singh to address the gathering.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everyone. Namaste. Good. It was a pleasure to all of you be on board with us. So my speech is a little different because the moment I just heard the discussion is quite good, and I felt it personally that I should talk about the propaganda and the development part also. So that's not my concern of area, but still there are few points which we have discussed. The central waste, of course, is in the limelight of the industry. So as Mr. Prem Chandavarkar said, vision should be clear on what we are doing. So the vision is very, very blur right now, and the public consultation should be considered in that case. So I think these are two very, very valid points. Apart from this, Mr. Premnath rightly said the lack of visionaries. I think the example of Jaipur, which has been quoted by Sir, it was a great, and I think we are really lacking the visionaries of the government side. And Mr. Mahesh here rightly answered a lot of questions, and he also said the government agency should be very clear about the processes and all the development which are taking place. And lastly, the fraud competition, which Sir has mentioned, which is it's like a big thing for the industry. But as an organizer, we really felt that there is a lot of development is going on in the exhibition industry, but because of this pandemic, a lot of things has been stopped. But as an organizer, we're definitely going to support this, and we will definitely going to put some more transparency in the system. And for that, we are organizing an exhibition in 2022 as a team. So for that, we are organizing an event in November. That's a curtain raiser for the exhibition in 2022, wherein we'll inviting all the architects, fraternity, interior designers, all the brands from the building construction material, dealer, distributors, and everyone. And definitely we are going to consider this as an opportunity for us to be a part of the such event, and definitely we will support the industry in this case. For that, I'm already inviting all the panelists, and we had a great discussion here. Mr. Sujit rightly point out all the concerned area, and we were really delightful for that. So once again, I would like to thank all the panelist speakers, and especially Team Zion, Zenith, everybody. They have supported so well. So we will definitely going to join you again. And thank you very much. Thank you. Over to you, Zenith.
Thank you so much, Weightage. And I want to mention a very, very heartfelt gratitude to all our panelists, Mahesh sir, Prem Chandavarkar sir, Sujit, thank you. Premnath sir, Shimul had to leave because she had to get on another call. But thank you all. Truly, you all have made this possible. And Mahesh sir, yes, I will also send Sujit the recording of the webinar that we did today, so that he won't miss out on any point that has to be sent to COA. Right, Sujit?
I would suggest that we put in a one page for him, because that would be too long, 2 hours of thing for him to go through.
No, the pointers. Yeah. Done.
Just put the pointers and send to him. That will be nice.
Done. So thank you all. This is a special thank you to the audiences also for joining us today.
Please send it before next Saturday.
Okay. Yes, sir, we'll do that. Thank you all for joining us. There is going to be a feedback that we will be sending to all. Those who can click on the feedback link and give us their feedback also, it would be great, because this is our first webinar and we have tried our best to make it really, really memorable, and I'm sure it's going to be that. We will also be informing everyone, the industry, about our next webinar very soon. And the topic and when we are going to organize it, we will be informing that as well. For details, kindly follow us on social media. We are on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So kindly follow us at Zion Exhibitions. And a heartfelt thank you to all of you once again for being with us today. Thank you and have a great evening, a great weekend. Thank you all.
Thank you.